Okay, let's begin working on the pants. And this is the pant front piece, and this is the right side of the fabric. And we'll start with the pockets. So with the right sides together, we will lay the pocket on top of the matching notches. So what we will do is actually sew a rectangle. So it'll be from here to here and then back here. So if you're following along with the instructions, we are actually on step 14. So what we're going to do is we're going to line up the pocket seam allowance. And to make it easier, you can actually draw or mark a rectangle on the actual pocket. So what we'll do is we will match it and mark it. Okay. So since the seam allowance is going to be 1/2 inch, we can actually make the rectangle a little bit more than 1/2 inch from the edge. So maybe more like 5/8. So what you're going to do is just line up your tape measure and move a little bit past 1/2 inch. Again, like 5/8, and then you can mark there. Again, 5/8 of an inch from that edge and mark. Okay, and we will sew the rectangle from here. Turn here, come all the way down, turn, and you'll end there. So what we can do now is actually pin this in place before we sew it. And if you want, you can always add more markings as well. Okay, and let's go sew it. And once you're done sewing, it will look like this. And our next step is going to be making 2 clips here at the corners, okay? So literally you're just making 2 diagonal clips here and here. So you can get your scissors, and the objective is to get as close to the corner as you can without going past that stitching line, like so. Okay, and our next step is going to be to turn the pocket inside. So actually, this is a technique I love to use for my inseam pockets because I notice it makes the pocket like super invisible. You can't even tell that there is a pocket, which I really like the look of. The only tip that I will say that can be a little tricky is making sure you get those corners super sharp. That's very important. Okay, and at this point, you actually have 2 options. What you can do next, if you want, you can edge stitch along here. Or the second option is to iron. So for me, I think what I'll do is just go to the iron and just iron those corners and get everything nice and flat. And this is how I iron the pocket. So far, it will look like this. And for our next step, what we will do is actually turn this to the wrong side because what we're doing is sewing the actual pocket back. So you should have cut 4 of these pocket pieces. So what you'll do is you'll take the next pocket piece and with the right sides together, match them perfectly. And you will sew them together all the way around here like so. Okay, and now we can pin the 2 pieces together, and I'm pinning it this way because we'll start sewing from here. Okay, and we are ready to sew. So what you'll do is you'll take the pocket and you will lay it flat on your sewing machine like this. and you'll start here and then come all the way around and you will end here. So after you are done sewing the pocket, it will look like this. And we just finished our pocket bag here. And so this is what it will look like. So now the pocket is completely finished. But I wanted to show you something. So our next step is going to be to sew the front to the back. And when we sew it, what we're going to do is we're going to be sewing just right along this edge here, right along this opening, because we want the pocket to be invisible. So we won't be sewing on the opening, just right along the opening. Okay, so we have both of the front of our pants completely finished, and I did want to mention something that is actually very important. At this step, just double check and make sure that one of the front of your pants are facing this way and the other front is facing in the opposite direction, just like a mirror. I did want to mention this because I have made the mistake where I had both of the fronts facing in the same direction, going in the same direction. And obviously you want a right and a left and not two rights or two lefts. So I got to the point where I actually sewed the pants all together, and then I realized that I had made a mistake. So just always double check as you go along. So let's start working on the pants together. In the instruction manual, I explain one way of sewing the pants together. But for this video tutorial, I want to show you another way of sewing the pants. That way you can learn two ways and decide which one you like best. Okay, and for this technique, we will take pant back. And as you can see here, the back of the pant has a larger curve or a larger scoop there. So what we're going to do is with right sides together, we are going to sew the side seams of the front and the back. Okay, so you'll match it perfectly, and then we'll go and sew it. And then after, we're going to work on the inseam, okay? But let's start with the side seam. And again, we just need to make sure we don't sew the pocket closed. So we're going to sew very closely, but not directly on that pocket opening, okay? So let's pin and start to sew. Okay, so we have now sewed the side seam together, and next we are going to do the inseam. But before we do the inseam, I definitely want to check the pocket since we sewed super close to the opening there. I just want to check and make sure I did it correctly. So what we'll do is we'll turn it to the outside, and as you can see, it just looks like a regular seam, but let's go ahead on and check the pocket. Okay, perfect. So we have our pocket done. So now let's work on the inseam. And as you can see here, they're actually two different shapes. So it won't match perfectly, but that's okay, not to worry. And as we are matching here at the top, the back piece will go slightly past the front piece. Like so, just slightly. And then we're going to match the bottom. And then we'll pin everything in between. And we will be sewing the seam with the 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, so we've sewed the inseam and it will look like this. And I also completed the other side of the pant leg. So now we have both sides done. So for the next step, what we will do is we'll take one of the pants legs and we will turn it right side out, like so. So now we will take this one and place it inside of the other pant leg, and we will match the crotch seams. So literally we're just inserting this pant leg that is turned right side out inside of the pant leg that is inside out. And then this way it'll give us right sides together once we sew the crotch seam. And shake it out. So now everything should completely match. So we should have front rise with front rise, that inseam, and then the back rise with the back rise. So what we'll do now that it's right sides together, we'll just sew this crotch together, okay? So our first step is going to be to match this inseam perfectly. So what you can do is you can open up the seam allowances, okay, and just line those two seams up and match them. And then you will pin this into place, okay? And then next we will do our back rises. So again, just match them and pin the two layers in place. And now the front rise, again, just match and pin. And now you are ready to sew, and you will be sewing this U shape with a 1/2 of an inch seam allowance all the way around. We sewed our U shape and it will look like this once you finish. And let's turn it right side out and see what we have here. And it's perfectly matched here, which is nice. So we'll turn it right side out. And our wide leg pants are finished. And now that the pants are finished, they will be oversized because we are using elastic at the waist. So we will work on the casing for that elastic. And in case you're not sure what casing is, it's basically a fabric tunnel typically around the waistline made to enclose a drawstring or elastic. Okay, so let's begin to work on our elastic casing. And as you can see here, you should have one pattern piece for the front and then one pattern piece for the back. And you're going to cut one of each, okay? And if you're following along in our instruction manual, you should be on step 22. And as you can see here, the front piece is slightly smaller than the back. And in the instructions, we started by sewing these two together by their side seam and then folding the bottom edge. But instead, I think we'll start by folding the bottom edge and then doing the side seams. It'll be easier since it's already flat. Okay, so with the wrong side facing up, what you'll do is you'll take this bottom edge and you will fold it a 1/2 of an inch and then you will go and iron it. And if you want to be very accurate, you can use a tape measure. Fold that 1/2 of an inch, measure it, and pin it in place. And now we are ready to iron. So now we will sew our two casing pieces together, the front with the back. So our first step is to take both pieces and with right sides together, we will match our side seam. Okay, and the next thing we'll do is we'll actually unfold what we just ironed and we will lay it flat and we will pin it in place. Okay, and once it's pinned, we'll do the same for the other side. Okay, and now we'll go sew within 1/2 inch seam allowance on both sides. So after you're done sewing the casing, it will look like this. And I quickly went in and pressed those side seams flat and open. So for now, we could take this and put it on the side. And if you're following along, we are on step 23 of our guidebook. Okay, so what we're doing now is we're sewing the top to the bottom. So what we will do is we will actually turn our top inside out. And the reason why is because we want to make sure that it's right sides together. So turn it inside out and we'll put it over the pants. And we will match the waistline seams. So again, the pants are right side out and the shirt is inside out. So they are right sides together. Okay, and it will look like this. And then so the next thing we're going to do is start by matching those side seams. So the side seam of the top with the side seam of the pants. So what you're going to do is you're going to match that seam perfectly. And as you can see, I just pinned that in place. Okay, and next we are going to match the center fronts here. So of the pants and the top, match it. And then you can pin in between here. And then next we will do the center backs and pin those in place as well. So now the top and the bottom are pinned, but we're not ready to sew just yet. So for the next step, let's go to our instruction manual and we'll be on step 25, which is actually to take our casing and to sew it to the waist as well. So you're going to be sewing 3 layers. And so the first step is going to be to turn your casing inside out. And so I didn't get confused. What I did was actually mark an F for the front and a B for the back. So that way I wouldn't get confused. And so what you'll do basically is you'll take your casing and you'll just place it over the waist like so. And just always double checking that you have the front with the front and the back with the back. It will look like this. So now we're ready to start pinning. So like we did before, we'll start with our side seams, making sure all 3 layers are matching perfectly and that they're lined up, and then you'll pin them in place. And then from there, we will move to the front and then we will pin the 3 layers of the back. Okay, now we will sew all the way around the circumference with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So now we have all 3 layers sewn together, and this is what it will look like whenever you're finished. And this is what it will look like from the outside. And as you can see, we have our jumpsuit sewn together, very exciting. And this is what it will look like from the back. So as you can see, so far it's coming together quite nicely. I'm excited, it's looking good. So if you're following along in the guidebook, you should be on step 26 by now. And for this, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our casing, fold it down, and top stitch it. And here is center front. And what I did was I zoomed in so you can see it just a little bit better. There we go. So what you'll do is you'll take this casing, you'll fold it down all the way around, and we will stitch right along this edge. So this will be the tunnel for the elastic. So as you can see here, the elastic will just be inserted inside that tunnel, okay? And we will have to leave an opening for the elastic to be inserted into. And what we will do is we will measure 2 inches, okay? And we will pin here and measure the 2 inches and pin here. Okay, so what we will do is we'll start sewing from here, but we'll leave this open for the elastic to be inserted into, okay? So again, just continue to push it down and pin it in place. And then from the outside, you'll have a top stitch here. And just to speed it up a bit, I wanted to show you how I just do the same, where I take the casing, push it down, pin it in place around the whole circumference of the waistline. And again, we're going to leave center front open when we go to sew. And what we will do is we will start from here, so all the way around the circumference and in here, leaving this open. Okay, so here we are on the sewing machine, and I just wanted to film me actually sewing the casing. So what we will do is we will take this fold here, this edge, and we will line it up with the edge of our presser foot like so. And what you will do, of course, start by back stitching. And you'll just sew right along this edge and just making sure that everything is nice and flat. And this is what we have so far, so it's going good. So I'll speed it up here just a bit. So what we'll do is continue all the way around. And as you can see here, I'm just constantly feeling, making sure that everything is nice and flat, moving everything out the way that could be caught underneath. So just constantly readjusting and making sure that the casing is nice and flat when sewing. And as you can see here, we are at center back, so we're halfway done. And to be honest, sewing this section does take a lot of patience, but go slowly and readjust as you go is my best advice. Because the most important thing, again, is that the casing is flat. So it's not hard to sew at all, but you just have to go slow and make sure you don't make any mistakes. Okay, so we have reached where we started. Remember to leave this open and we will back stitch and it is finished. Okay, so when it is finished, it will look like this from the outside. Okay, and remember we left this section open and then here it is from the back. So it will look like this from the back. And I will show you also what it should look like from the inside as well. Okay, and we'll cut that little thread we have there. And then, so yeah, it's just literally just like a little tunnel and the elastic will go through there, okay? So for now, what we'll do is we'll place this on the side and we'll begin to work on our elastic. So you don't have to worry about what length of elastic to cut. I actually made a pattern piece that corresponds with your size. So with the pattern, you should have this pattern piece. So what you will do is you'll take your elastic, measure it with your pattern piece, and then you will cut. Okay, and if you're following along with the guidebook, we are actually on step 27. And as you can see here, we are going to be inserting the elastic into the casing. So there are different ways and techniques for doing this. The one way is by using a safety pin, okay? And you'll attach a safety pin on the end of the elastic and push it through. But in this tutorial, I wanted to show you a new tool. It's actually called an elastic threader. And I love this because it's effective and super easy to use. So in the instructions, I have the safety pin, but here I have the threader just to show you multiple techniques and tools, and you can decide which one works best for you. So for this, you'll actually be using the biggest size of the 3 elastic threaders. And for a little bit more information about the elastic threader, so this is the one that's available in the shops here in Paris, in the sewing shops. So this is the one that I have. The price is €5.60, not bad at all. The brand is Bonjour, France. If I mispronounced it, please forgive me. My French is not the best. But as you can see here, they do have shipping worldwide, which is nice. So if you want this one in particular, I'll place a link in the description box below. Or if you just want to order one from Amazon, this Dritz one has amazing ratings. So I'll place the link in the description box below as well. So here we have our elastic and we will prepare it. And as you can see with your elastic threader, it actually has 2 slits. So we're going to insert the elastic into the first slit like so. Okay, and then you're going to pull it and you'll take this piece and insert it back into the second slit. And you're going to want to leave a little bit of a tail here, okay? So now the elastic is prepared. Now take your jumpsuit, and what you will do is you will also take your elastic and you will insert it inside of the casing tunnel. So for this, what you will do is you will push it through and pull, push and pull. And the important thing here is just to make sure that the elastic stays straight and that it doesn't turn or flip on you. Okay, and I'm going to speed it up here just a bit, but basically all you're doing is taking that elastic with the elastic threader and you're pushing it through that casing tunnel. So you're pushing it and then you're pulling the fabric over. Okay, so push and then pull, push and then pull. Okay, so it looks like we have made it back around. And it can be very tricky because you want to make sure that you don't lose your ends, okay? So the last step is going to be to take both ends, to overlap them and sew them together. So overlap them and you just do a stitch back and forth here just to sew them together, okay? Overlap and stitch. So what we'll do is we'll get our pins so that way we can pin it in place and then we will go and sew it. Once you're done overlapping and top stitching, it will look like this. So now you can start equally balancing out the elastic gathers, okay? So you'll notice once you have sewed this, you'll notice that like on some sides they may have like many gathers, while on the other side they may not have as many. So just take a few minutes to distribute all the gathers equally throughout the circumference of the waistline. And once you feel like everything looks good, you can check it from the outside, and everything is looking good, but we obviously still have this opening. So what we will do is we will go on our sewing machine, pull and top stitch this close. So let's go do that. Okay, so I wanted to show you on the sewing machine how I actually sew this. So let me zoom in a bit. Okay, so it's very important when you sew this that you pull while sewing it and that you push the elastic out of the way. And basically, we're just gonna sew on the edge like we did before. Okay, so super easy, and now we have top stitch that opening closed. So once we're done sewing, it will look like this. And once the top stitch and everything is sewn, you can properly evenly distribute the elastic gathers. Okay? So it's very exciting. We only have one last step, and that is the hem, and then we're finished. Okay, so for the hem, you actually have two options. The first option is to serge this circumference, or you can actually zigzag stitch it as well. And what you're going to do is you'll fold this part up 1 inch. Okay, so you'll fold it up and you'll top stitch it. And what you'll do is you'll top stitch it just right along the inside of this edge here. So this one is simple and very easy. The next one that you can do is you'll start by folding this up 1/4 of an inch, and you can press it if you want to, and then you'll fold it up again 3/4 of an inch, and then you'll top stitch it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you for the next tutorial. Bisous!